Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Science at Home. In this episode, we're going to talk all about the force. Swapping, come in and get a look at this. The lightsaber's working.
Wow, that's so cool, man!
Swapping. Okay. Maybe there's some types of force that you just shouldn't mess around with. So I thought we'd come here to the physics lab to look at forces of physics that we can control and that we understand. That's what we'll do today, yeah. I hope Swavik's all right. I'm sure he's fine. He's probably fine. Physics forces. That's more like it. So the first force we're going to talk about today is an invisible force that's all around us. We can't do anything about it. It's called gravity. Now, we did an episode looking at gravity out in space, and you can have a look at that if you haven't seen it before. But today we're going to talk about gravity here on Earth and understanding just how it acts. So I think a good way of thinking about it is gravity almost feels like a giant spring that's holding on to us. We know that if we pull the spring, it gets pulled back. If I try to jump up, I get pulled back. If I try to cycle up a hill, it's really difficult because I'm having to drag this spring with me the whole way up the hill, but cycling down the hill is really easy because the spring helps me down. So think about it like that. Gravity is just acting straight down, just like a spring, pulling everything. Now, if we want to look at gravity the way physicists and scientists do it, we're going to have to think about a kind of a simple object. Let's use a box like this. So I'm going to put this box on the table and I'm going to try and imagine the forces it feels. Okay? So imagine you are the box. What are the forces you can feel? You got it? Now, the first force is gravity. And I'm going to show that by an arrow. Yeah, you can see gravity acts straight down. And we call these arrows vectors. It's just a word we use, and the longer the arrow is, the bigger the force. For example, if I use a light object, like this smaller box, it's going to have a shorter arrow. Yeah, so we can see these different arrows. Now, when I'm looking around me at objects all around the world, I try to see things like this, yeah? Try to imagine them. I want you to give it a shot as well. Look at the objects all around the room or out the window and try and see these vector arrows, these acting straight down, these gravitational forces. Can you see them? You can even color code them if you want. It's your own imagination. You can do that. Okay? Yeah, so we see all these objects have these arrows. But if there's this force acting straight down, well then, why aren't the blocks going boom through the table if they're being pulled down by the force? Well, there must be some other force acting up. To figure out what that is, we're going to have to get closer and take a look at the surface of the table. So we know from earlier episodes that all objects are made of atoms, yeah? Billions and billions of atoms. That means the surface of this table is just billions and billions of atoms all joined up. Now we can kind of think about that like a group of people holding hands in a long chain. So I'm an atom. Here's my arms, I'm holding onto the next atom. So imagine that, millions and millions and millions of copies. Now if we put a heavy object on top of the table, suddenly I start getting pushed downwards. So I have to tense up to keep myself raised up. That's what the atoms are doing, they're just keeping like so. If I put an even heavier object, we start getting pushed downwards and we tense up again, like this, to hold and to push upwards so that the object doesn't crash through. If I put in an object that's super heavy, then the bonds are going to break, the table breaks apart, and the object falls through the table. Okay, so let's think about that. Let's think about that now in terms of our arrows. We can imagine the gravitational force going down, and then there's the other force from the table going up. So that upwards force is going to be exactly equal to the downwards force, because those atoms are going to pull as much as they have to pull to keep the table flat. Okay, so now we see these up and down arrows. And if you look around you at the things in the room or outside, you should be able to see the downward arrow of gravity, and you should be able to visualize the upward arrow of the thing that's holding it up. Could be the floor, could be a shelf, could be the table, they're all being held up. Okay, so now we're going to go and have a look at a slightly more complicated situation. We've only looked at up and down forces. We're going to see what happens when forces come from the side. Forces from the side. Well, so if we look at this box, I got this heavy bag here, and I've tied a rope onto it to be able to give forces from the side. But first, let's imagine we're the box again and think about those other forces. So we're the box, and we can feel gravity pulling us down, and we can feel the floor pushing us up. And those two forces balance out. It doesn't move. So if I want to make it move in this direction, I need to give a force that's big enough to drag it this way. Now I can give a little force. Yeah, if I pull in this rope, we can see the force acts exactly in the direction of the rope. Yeah, it's called a tension force. If I pull with just a gentle part, we'll just see a short arrow. If I pull harder, we see the arrow gets longer, more force. But it's still not enough force to make it move. So if I'm given a force and it's not moving, there must be another force in the other direction. Any idea what that might be called? It's called friction. Yeah, friction force. That's got to do with things rubbing off each other. Now, if I put loads of slippery oil on the floor and I pulled it with this little force, it would probably slide no problem. But there's friction just between those two surfaces rubbing against each other. So what I'm going to do now to figure out how much force I need to pull is I'm going to use trigonometry. Yeah, and I'm going to break this force into a triangle. But how will I do that? So imagine I'm pulling this force and it goes in the direction of this rope. Well, imagine a line going straight downwards. Yeah, and another line going straight back. And we make what's called a right-angled triangle. So the amount of force that I pull in this direction, yeah, can be broken up into the amount of force in the horizontal direction, that's in this way, and in the vertical direction, that's this way. So what I need to do is I need to give enough force so that the horizontal direction, the bottom of the triangle, is equal to the amount of force being given by friction. So I can pull really hard and make it move, or I can change my angle and move and pull softer. See that? If I change the angle back to here, no matter how hard I pull, I'll never be able to make it. I'll have to pull really hard, like so. So you can see that by changing the angle from this to this to this, you're able to change the amount of force in the horizontal or the vertical direction. Okay, so that's the basis of vectors, and that's something that usually we only teach the students in university. So hopefully you're able to get that into your minds, and when you look around you and you see forces, even if they're up and down or side to side forces, you'll start to be able to see these arrows, visualize it, and figure out what's going on. So thanks so much for tuning in, guys. It was great to have you back here in Maynooth University Experimental Physics Department, and hopefully I'll see you here sometime in the not too distant future. Bye bye.